Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. God, that's good. So, first up, on news today, we have more Critical Role news yet. I feel a little bit bad for anybody that's not into Critical Role because it's just kind of become a lot of the same thing over and over again, but that's kind of how it goes when you've got one major corporation, company thing doing a lot of stuff in the D&D sphere. Critical Role had an article drop on Variety yesterday where they talked about a lot of different things. They talked about the whole scope of what they've been working on, what they've been doing, obviously covering a lot of stuff on the new animated show. And they mentioned, Travis specifically mentioned in the article that they have been talking about doing a feature-length movie as well as being in talks for making an Exandria-based video game, which is... That is absolutely wild. That is insane. They are definitely moving from a D&D specific show, stream, etc., to being a multimedia like entertainment company, which is honestly super super cool. And congrats to them for making that move because that's a big move to make. Both of those things are nowhere near on the horizon. It's just something that is out there, apparently, that they've been talking about and thinking about and working on making happen. But those will be way down the line because, as Liam says, any type of video game specifically he was talking about that's going to be good is going to take forever, especially if you want it to be great. That's another rough, probably a little bit paraphrased quote from that article. Definitely recommend going to check it out if you are interested. It really kind of talks about like how they developed and where they're at now, if you haven't already seen it. Moving on to streams for Friday, today, and the weekend. We've got on twitch.tv/DND. We've got today at 11:30 p.m. Acquisitions Incorporated. Tomorrow, Saturday, at 4:30 p.m., they've got Let's Get Wildmount. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., they've got the Trace Albus. And Sunday at 7 p.m., they've got D4. That is, again, all on twitch.tv/DND. So there is something every evening for you to take a look at. And a stream that has been recently added to the rotation because... honestly, I hadn't realized that they'd already started streaming it. On twitch.tv/Chromatic Dice, a group of TikTok people have started up a actual play stream, and that is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, twitch.tv/Chromatic Dice. It's got quite a few people that I've interacted with relatively regularly in it, which is super cool, and I am excited to actually get to start watching and to tune in with them. I cannot remember if I actually said or not. That is on Saturday. That stream is on Saturday. I did not write it down on my list, so I fear that I did not actually say it out loud, but my brain is telling me that it was on Saturday. So, if you're interested, go check that out. Also, hopefully starting within the next 3 weeks or so, I am going to be in a stream game with several other, again, people from TikTok, run by the Queen of Evil herself, Brooklyn Tuesday. I will have her on the show here shortly so that we can talk a little bit. We can talk about, topics other than just the stream, and we can give you guys a little bit more information about it. But I am super, super excited about that because it's going to be a really, really fun game. The players are phenomenal. So be looking forward to that. Just a little plug for you. Moving on from streams, we go over to T&D, which today I have a mug that has a coat. It's got a little coat on it, and the coat has a moose on it. I don't really understand why or how or anything like that. The coat does come off if I need it to, so that I can wash the mug and it's not just gross. But it's like a fleecy, soft kind of thing. It's very nice. It actually does help keep stuff warm for longer, and it makes holding the mug nice as opposed to just scalding. I've just got straight up green tea today. I've been working a lot, and my job involves a lot of physical labor, so that means that my joints are a little bit swollen, and not so happy. So, hoping that a little bit more regular green tea will help take that down some, because it's supposed to help do that. But oh well. We'll see. It's fine. Work's gonna get hard for another couple weeks here, and then it's gonna slow back down a little bit. Hopefully, please God, hopefully. Anyway, moving on from T&D, we get to our topic for this lovely Friday. Today, I had something else planned, but I really want to talk about new players and introducing new players to the game. I think part of it is all this talk about Critical Role recently has really gotten me like back to thinking about when I was starting out playing. I spent a weekend with a lot of the majority of the party that I've been DMing for well over 2 years now, who were all brand new players when I started. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about getting new players started, working with them at your table, and that sort of thing. I'll do what I had planned later on some other time. It's not crazy important. Not so much as I think that making sure that we sort of establish like how to actually interact with new players and how to help teach someone the game as we get more and more people into the game, particularly as Critical Role Campaign 3 is starting in less than a week now. So I really want to just sort of hit this one hard and hopefully hammer it home a little bit. So let's talk about using new players in your game. First off, there are two sort of very distinct different scenarios that you could be finding yourself in. Either you have a table of entirely new players, in which case everybody is on a level playing field and you have to like teach everybody the game, or you have one or two new players, really, because it feels like past that everybody's kind of on the same page. Like if it's one veteran player and the DM and then like a group of 4 brand new players, the two people who have played before know exactly what they're getting into, and it sort of falls into the entirely new category. But when you're adding just like 1 or 2 brand new people to the table, it's got a little bit of a different vibe. So the first thing that I have written down here, I just made some real quick notes. So this is probably going to be a little bit rambly, a little bit windy, and I apologize for that. But that's what I got for you. The first thing that I have written down here is do a session 0.5. This goes for both types of group that I just described, the new one and the not so new one. Do a session 0.5. This is really, really good if you are adding a new player or 2 new players to a table of people who already know what's going on. A session 0.5 might actually be better for those people who know exactly what's going on. It's a good time for the DM to sit down with them and be like, all right, so here's the deal. We're going to teach so-and-so how to play the game, and sort of run through the expectation in that scenario with them, right? Then having another session 0.5 where they cover the stuff that I'm going to talk about in a second here with those new players, also probably a good idea. But having a session where you like sit down the veteran players and are like, listen, these people don't know what they're doing. They're going to be trying their best, but I need you to be on the same page as me here. Not a bad idea. Now, if you are, working in an entirely new group, breaking a bunch of new people to play the game, doing a session 0.5 looks more like a crash course on the rules of the actual game. Again, I think you should do this with any brand new player, but this is especially the case if you have a group of new players coming in, right? A session 0.5 can be where you sort of like lay stuff out. You might run and play a couple of like intro level session mission things, almost something that's like quick 30 minutes, like, okay, here's how you interact with people. Here's like, I say interact. Here's how you talk to like NPCs and each other. Here's how you like fight some stuff, that sort of thing. 80% of the character sheet is fighting based stuff anyway, or inventory management really. So having that session 0.5 where they're in a very controlled environment where they can test stuff out is not a bad choice. It's kind of like in a video game where if you get like a new something, you get sent to like the white box room where the dummy that you can just kind of like hit a bunch of times with whatever the new thing is until you figure out how it works. That's kind of what I'm talking about with a session 0.5. Because session 0 should remain the same, where it's like laying expectations, all that sort of thing. because I think that that is a super important, super valuable thing that you should definitely have with whoever's going to be in your party. Um, Going along with doing a session point 5, I think that it is super valuable, almost critical, for a DM to give new players cheat sheets. The same kind of thing actually might go if there is like a change of the guard in the DM seat. Like if a player wants to run like a one shot or something, the DM that is always there, give them sort of like a cheat sheet of quick things to know, quick things to do. When I was setting up my table, after I waited probably too long to do it, I gave them a cheat sheet of all of their actions, all of their bonus actions, all of their reactions that I knew of. Probably level 4 or something, and they started at level 1. So again, a little bit too late, but I gave it to them eventually, and they still reference it every once in a while now. They've obviously gotten a much better handle on the game. Sorry, I keep touching my nose for some reason. But they still reference it now and again as like a tool to really sort of like help remind them of exactly what they can do. They've obviously added a lot of stuff to it since then because they have, leveled up, and we've got things like, I don't know, spellcasters, multi-classing, etc. Like they've gotten a lot more complicated as characters, but the players have been able to keep up with that. So moving on from that, but still sort of in the same vein, keep it simple. Make sure to keep it simple. I have been told countless times in my everyday life to observe the KISS method, which is keep it simple, stupid, because I like to make things too complicated. And I get the feeling that a lot of dungeon masters in the universe like to do the same thing. They like to make things complicated. They like to make things engaging and interesting and fun and challenging for their players. Do not do that with brand new people, because pretty much regardless, you are throwing somebody into a situation where they are deeply unsure of what they're doing, and you are almost definitely going to scare them if you come at them hard with some stuff. Because people usually, in my experience at least, come into it with no expectation, so they really don't know what they're doing, or they come into it with a video game expectation, where there are like set choices that they can make, and the story will force them along their way. TTRPGs are not that way. They are so open-ended so that you can just like do what you want to do, which is phenomenal. It's one of the best things about them. But if you come into it with the video game mindset, then you're going to end up in some weird consequences that you didn't really expect. So it is better to just keep it simple. Keep it straightforward. Give them a fetch quest. Give them a clear out this dungeon. Stuff like that. I think I swallowed a little bit of tea weird earlier because this is going weird now. Sorry, guys. So make sure you keep it simple. This is a part where, again, with this table of veterans, with a couple of new players, you want to be like, okay, we are running a very straightforward, very simple mission here, right? This is what we're going to do. This is essentially the conversation you can have with both of them. But the vets then are on the same page so that they know, like, okay, this is what we're doing, and we're using it as a tutorial kind of thing. In my home game, I used levels 1 through 4, so up to level 5, as the tutorial for them. It is where they learned what the different stuff they could do was. It is where they learned how to use a couple of the different mechanics. It is where they learned how the game actually operates, and it is where I railroaded them a little bit more. I didn't say you can only go here, but I gave them reason to choose the path that they ended up going on. They were being hunted by this crime organization, so the recommendation to go find this settlement in the forest, because there was no crime out there, probably a good choice. They hit level 5, and I told them, congratulations, you finished the tutorial. The gloves are off now, which is always fun. I made sure to throw a TPK in the tutorial phase, having it be a full knockout, and then they got captured and whatever. But it's important, I think, to give a tutorial type phase to those new players, and to keep that tutorial phase very simple and very straightforward. For a table full of new players, it'll probably take longer because they won't have the ability to see other players at the table who are doing things the right way, quote unquote. There's no right way to play the game. It's the more efficient way, essentially. Which actually brings me to another good point. Recruit help if you have a table full of brand new players, if you can, and you want to. Like, you don't have to by any means. I didn't, but it is definitely beneficial to you as a DM to not only or to not have to both run the game and manage the players who are learning the game at the same time. So if you can have another person come in, somebody that you trust, to like actually help you teach these players the game, that's definitely helpful. You sort of have that built in at a table with a lot of veterans and then a couple new players, but with a full new table, it's a good idea a lot of the time. Let's see. The last big thing that I have on here is to be patient to a degree. Be understanding and patient to a degree. And I think this is really important because so often I feel like you fall into the trap of either getting impatient with somebody not learning the rules fast enough, even though they've only played a couple of sessions and maybe they haven't had to interact with a lot of this stuff yet, and they're just having a hard time sort of grasping the new concept of the game, or you are over accommodating and you sort of let them continue this phase of, we're going to call it ignorance, because I don't really have a better word for it, but like you let them continue to be more helpless than they need to, further along into the game than you really should. And that sounds harsh to say, but at a certain point, if you've been playing the game for 2 months pretty consistently, you should probably have picked up, like what you're supposed to roll when I ask you for a persuasion check. Like, you should know generally where your skills are going to be on your sheet, right? And you should know generally how to like access this different information that you might have. You should know to be able to look through your inventory to be able to like creatively interact with stuff. And you don't need permission to like interact with NPCs or something like that. So putting a little bit of the burden on them towards the beginning to sort of like make their own choices, make their own decisions, but while offering them a guiding hand is not bad. But if you leave that guiding hand out for too long, you don't want them to start to use it as a crutch instead. So being understanding and patient, because they are obviously learning the game, they're obviously new to the game, definitely important. But you gotta sort of cut the cord at some point here, right? And if you don't do that, then you're just kind of going to be stuck with a table full of people who are not really committed to learning the game that you are putting a lot of time and energy into. Be that as a DM or be that as a veteran player at a table with a couple of new people. Because ultimately, if you are stuck dragging along somebody who doesn't want to play the game or doesn't want to learn how to play the game, you're not going to have as much fun. And maybe you either need to move on or pick a different game or something like that. And that sounds harsh. But you know what? Sometimes the truth kind of hurts. Oh, God. I am all over the place today. But the last thing I want to say on this, really, it's not in my notes. I'm going off script. Even though I didn't really have a script, I never really have a script. I just have a list of things I want to cover. The new players can be some of the most rewarding people to have at your table, because there is nothing like getting to watch that aha moment as people realize, oh, I can do whatever I want to do, in real time at your table, right? Having that like click in their head where suddenly they realize anything is possible is amazing. It's so cool as a DM, as a player, as anybody who gets to see it. And they often will make some of the more creative choices, because those of us who have been playing for a long time, or even just have been playing for an extended time, or maybe who are DMs who have never really played before, but have been like actively doing all of the strategizing and everything, we're kind of locked into different thought patterns and processes and stuff like that. Like, I make it a point to try and challenge the ways that I would approach different problems as much as possible. And one of the best exercises for me in doing that is when I set up a puzzle to try and figure out how I would solve it, and then how I, as like the omnipotent DM that like is building everything and everything like that, would solve it. and how my group of feral toddlers that are players would try and solve it. Because I mean, honestly, it can be so creative and cool. I presented them with a door that had been fused shut that was set into this piece of, like, the side of a mountain, right? There was no way they were getting through the door. And the bard walks up to it and is like, "Can I reduce the door?" And I was like, I mean, let me read that. So I went and I read it. And you reduce an object, and the door and the frame were one object. So I was like, I guess so. So she reduced the door to half the size, and it fell out of the mountain, because either that or it was going to get ripped in half by the mountain. Like, I hadn't even considered that, right? Like, the creativity that some of these newer players will bring is just beyond me sometimes, honestly, and it's phenomenal. And I highly encourage you to include new people at your table, especially with the hobby growing as much as it is. You don't want to be like the stick in the mud that doesn't, I'm on my rocking chair on my porch, you kids get off my lawn. Like, invite people into the hobby, invite people you know to play, because who knows, maybe you'll make a new nerd. Maybe you'll find the best player your table's ever had. Like, who knows? Anything is possible, man. Anything is possible. Oh boy. That is where I'm going to end that one. That's all I'm going to say on new players. I could really talk about them for much longer, because I really like new players. I really do. I've taught maybe a dozen people how to play D&D, and it is always so much fun. But like I said, that is everything I have to say. That is everything I have to talk to you guys about this morning. Thank you so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you especially to my patrons. You guys are really the ones that make this show possible. If you are able to and want to support the show, the link to that is in the description of this video. I would greatly appreciate it, for sure. Thank you so much for following along. I release these videos every single weekday, so that you guys have a little something to listen to every single day. But with all that said, I will see you guys on Monday. And until then, keep on rolling.